one of the indefatigable few joins me now. That is the Conservative MP for Lichfield, Michael Fabricant. Mr. Fabricant, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your time as ever. How bothered are you with, if you caught sight of the front page of the Spectator, the Conservative Bible of sorts, formally edited by the Prime Minister, which has got a front page saying is it over? Not saying it is over. Is it over? Question mark. And its political editor, James Forsyth, saying this is, quote, the gravest peril of his premiership. Is it?
Well, it's certainly the gravest peril, because up to now he's been immensely popular, and of course incredibly popular with MPs, because he's kept ahead despite the fact that we're in the middle of a parliament. Normally you would expect Labour to be ahead, and normally we've been 10 points ahead. But of course things went badly downhill when he decided that the process of the ruling over Owen Paterson, who subsequently resigned as an MP, was not as it should be. It got conflated with trying to defend Owen Paterson himself. But anyways, that was a problem, because Owen Paterson clearly was, in my judgment, actually in the wrong here, and he did resign. And then, of course, all that has happened since with regard to these garden parties. But let's wait and see. I mean, Boris has an amazing capability of bouncing back. Yeah. And he's a very imaginative
Michael Fabricant has an amazing capacity for ridding itself of leaders it feels no longer fit the role and will not win the general election.
Well, that's quite right. And people say that the Conservative Party is the most ruthless of parties in Europe. I'm not always sure about that. But, you know, I was pretty ruthless when it came to John Major and Theresa May, in that I voted against them in votes of no confidence. But, you know, I would, at the moment, certainly have no shadow of a doubt if it ever came to a vote of no confidence. And I don't think we're getting there yet. In supporting Boris Johnson still, because the underlying point, which a lot of people realise, and certainly in focus groups it's being made quite apparent, is people recognise that Boris, you know, developed an incredibly successful vaccine programme, the economy is doing well, better than any other country in the G7, and so on and so forth. He has said he's sorry. I mean, you've heard all this and you've been covering it for the last 24 hours. You know, it's very much a wait and see time now.
Well, and there are straws to clutch at. I mean, I read a few emails out earlier from people outside of the Westminster bubble. You could make an argument that says, yes, OK, his poll approval rating dropped 12 points from the beginning of December until the last few days. And if it's that precipitous in that direction, it can be maybe just as precipitous in the opposite direction. So you can make a case for his survival. But when you put it all together, and as I say, in particular, Michael, just the Spectator of all periodicals, they like to call themselves a newspaper, of all publications, to come out this strongly and say, this is really serious, he's hanging by a thread, will set a lot of your fellow MPs scratching their heads this weekend.
I don't think it will, Colin. I hate to disagree with you, but, you know, the Spectator is a newspaper, as they call themselves. The newspaper has to sell editions. It has to be controversial. Journalists need to be controversial. And I think MPs are a lot more used to this sort of thing than you might think. And I wouldn't say it'd be water off a duck's back, but just because the Spectator is saying that. No, I think people will be waiting to see what the focus groups are saying, what the opinion polls start to say, and most importantly, of course, what Sue Gray has to say.
Michael Fabricant, we appreciate what you've had to say this afternoon. Thanks ever so much for joining us. Thanks a lot.